we can't see the public schools. Public schools are one of the few democratic institutions that we have left. We have to believe and continue to support a common good. What we're seeing is the dismantling of the idea of a common good, the dismantling and trying to privatize everything. We can't run the country like a company.
You're listening to Cornhole Champions. I'm Zachary Oren Smith with a special edition of the show. At the end of Wednesday's episode, we talked about a problem in Waterloo. The Waterloo Community School District recently made headlines when it withdrew from the University of Northern Iowa's annual African American Read-In. They cited concerns that such a read-in could violate federal directives against diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, that a vindictive state or Trump administration could use it as justification to go after their funding. In response to this decision, I want to welcome Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Waterloo native, and founder of the 1619 Freedom School, Nikole Hannah-Jones, who has organized an alternative read-in event this Saturday, March 15th, at her alma mater, Waterloo West High School. The link to register for the event and donate to the Freedom School are in the show notes. Hello, Nikole.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. With 27% of Waterloo's student population identifying as Black, the highest percentage in the state, this decision and the community's response carry a particular resonance. Can you tell me where you were when you first heard that the school district was pulling out in this way?
Sure. I was at home. I was actually texting with Sharita Stokes, who is the co-director of the Freedom School, but she's also an elementary school teacher in the Waterloo Schools. And so we were actually texting about a separate event that I'm holding tomorrow night, which is a free community screening of Nickel Boys. And she said that this read-in had been canceled and that she was really upset by it for obvious reasons. And so I asked her a little bit more about it and found out that as part of the read-in, all of the students were supposed to get this book by Tammy Charles and get to take the book home. And so my first thought was, okay, well, what are they going to do with the books? Because we have a means of distributing books through the school.
Totally.
And that was my first thought was, can we get our hands on those books and give it out? But then I started getting really angry. I'm angry about a lot that's happening in our country right now. And I was like, we could actually host the read-in at our school. And from there, I tend to take my anger out in ways that really try to show the kind of absurdity of where we are in this moment and to push back and show that we're not powerless. So it went from that to this really big event that we're holding on Saturday.
Let's talk about that event. You brought together a lineup of authors for Saturday's event, including Tammy Charles, the writer you mentioned. You wrote All Because You Matter, Derek Barnes, the writer of Like Lava in My Veins and The Queen of the Garden, and Jacqueline Woodson. I was flipping through her book this morning, The Day You Begin. And I think it's a really kind of like widespread collection of both children's and YA writers. And I'm kind of curious how you think about like kind of the through line of these folks that you've brought together for this panel.
Sure. So as I started thinking about this read-in, I was like, I know a lot of writers. I live in Brooklyn. The writers, I've never met Tammy Charles, but Jackie Woodson and Derek Barnes are my friends. I actually asked a couple other writers who weren't able to make it on such short notice, but they're sending books. Jason Reynolds, who is a very, very famous children's book author, as well as Renee Watson. And they both sent books, but they weren't able to come. So I just started just dialing my friends, frankly. That's how I put this list together. And then Tammy Charles was obvious because hers was the book that led to Waterloo Community Schools pulling out. And we should be clear, somebody made a complaint. I believe it was an educator in the Waterloo Schools made a complaint about the book because on the very last page of the book, which is a book of affirmation for Black kids that was written right around the time of after the George Floyd protests, there's a little Black boy standing in front of a Black Lives Matter sign on the last page. Mm-hmm. There's no text on the page. He's just standing in front of a sign that says that. And because of that, someone complained and the district got afraid. And let me be clear, I'm disappointed the district made that decision, but I understand it because we do know that the Trump administration is pulling funds from schools and that there could be retribution. So anyway, that's kind of how it came together. And I texted Jackie and I told her what happened, and I was like, I'm trying to hold a big community-wide read-in. Would you come to Waterloo? And she said, yeah. She actually has to be. She already had an event that weekend in Seattle and is making a pit stop, which, as you know, is not easy to do because there's one airline that goes into Waterloo. And on most days, there's one flight that leaves out each day and one flight that comes in. I think she's actually flying into Cedar Rapids. Um, but the
An
same thing,
international airport, let's be
right?
clear.
A
I live
lot
in
of us
Iowa
like to
City.
fly
Let's.
Delta and not American, but it's not an easy place to get to. It's not a place that this caliber of writers typically come to, and certainly not to have all four of us on a stage at the same time. So I'm really excited about how we could turn what was really disappointing, disturbing turn of events into something that's much bigger. And I just looked at our registrations, and it's much bigger.
And so Nikole Hannah-Jones is flying in all of her friends to have this great party in Waterloo. Is kind of what I'm hearing. Tell me, let's talk about the book itself, right? You mentioned the last page, but like all because you matter. I'm curious. You're gonna have you got these 250 copies that were mentioned in the release. I'm curious about the significance of this particular book, right? Like why it has resonance, why obviously there's a lot of reasons why you would want to like kind of recreate this read-in event alternative to this read-in event. But I'm curious about what struck you about this book. Was there some piece of it that you found really meaningful?
Yes, I mean, I feel like, particularly at this time, I don't think we've seen enough coverage of what this time feels like to be a Black child in a school right now. To be in a school and be told, and this is not just Iowa, but all over the country, that you can't celebrate Black History Month. I've been doing reporting for this essay I'm writing where students have had their Black History Month projects removed from the walls of the classroom, where murals to famous Black heroes have been taken down from the walls, where classroom celebrations and school-wide assemblies have been canceled because they violate a mandate from the President of the United States. That has to feel, I know how it feels as an adult, but to be a child when this is where you're starting to, um, you know, understand your place in the world, where you're developing your identity, where you're trying to have, bake in some self-esteem for yourself, to know that there's something tainted or wrong about your history. And if there's a book that says your lives matter, that's enough to get an entire event canceled. So I really think what Tammy Charles' book does is it is an affirmation to those kids. It is telling those kids that you are valuable, you are important, you come from a great people, you are worthy. That's a message that all children need, but I think especially Black children in this moment, it's just very necessary. So to me, that's what Tammy Charles's books do so well. Um, is they're just affirming for Black children their value in a society that clearly is not demonstrating that. And what I think is like so appalling, and I don't care where you stand politically on this, but what's so appalling to me is we know that there's a gaping achievement gap in Waterloo. That's why the 1619 Freedom School exists. We know that the typical Black student in Waterloo reads at 1 to 2 grade levels behind the typical white student. That you would not be able to hand out a book for a child to take home that affirms that child's identity. That is an ugly society that does something like that. And that is a society that is not actually interested in ensuring that our children get a quality education, that they're able to read and love books. That's what made me so angry, is that not just that the reading was canceled, but that you were going to deprive children of the ability to get these books. There are certainly our community partners, and the Waterloo Schools did and is giving those books out through community partners, but that's not the same as every single first grader getting to take that book home, right? That's still going to be dependent upon you having some connection to a community organization or organization being able to reach you, as opposed to every child in that first grader in the district was going to get this book.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're saying about that, sort of like the sense of precarity in this moment, well, I mean, I'll just take my own example. Like for the last 2 months, I've been following the state house pretty closely, and
Mhm.
DEI in those spaces is kind of blamed for everything, from the price of used cars to toothaches, right? It seems like kind of this habitual, kind of a tick, right? Um, and so when I was reading about the actions of the school district and was thinking through, I was kind of struck by this precarity that goes both ways. That there is this sense that when a parent complains, right, that funding question is so large, right? It
Yes.
does hang it is so present of mind for officials. I hear this on the city, like I hear this here in Iowa City, right? Is we think about what does it mean to be try to be a blue bubble city butting up against a very powerful state and nation. What does it mean to do justice? What does it mean to do right by our people? And I wonder what you make of the kind of decision matrix that institutions like Waterloo Community School District is given, like Iowa City, like a progressive news institution like Iowa Starting Line, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you think about the like kind of decision making? Is there a third choice that maybe we should be trying to look for in these spaces? I don't know.
Look, I think we should just acknowledge these are very dark times. I'll be 50 next year. I'd never known a period in our country like this. Um, and so I think this is why, to me, it's been important not to condemn the Waterloo schools for this decision. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. We know the state legislature, because of this voucher bill, is losing all of this money and now is cutting budgets, funding to all of these districts, including Waterloo. Waterloo is having to cut millions of dollars out of its budget while it's serving an extremely needy student population. And so, no, they could not risk losing federal funds. They couldn't risk losing state funds because, of course, Iowa has this divisive concept law as well. So, what's happening is that these efforts are working exactly as they are designed, that you were not able to control these progressive institutions that were determined to continue to affirm diversity in all ways. And so you can control them by controlling the purse,
Sure.
by making them unable, um, through loss of funding, to actually do the work that they're here to do. And so, I interact. I teach at a university. I have I my daughter's in public schools. Like, I'm interacting all the time with a lot of these institutions that are having to make really tough decisions, because you can stand on your principle for sure, and then you can lose money and the people you serve are suffering. And so they're trying to balance, when can we speak out, but also what is justice? What is just if ultimately the people we're serving are hurt? And the last thing I'll say, it's we're in this perverse moment because this idea of withholding federal funds over civil rights, that's what they're calling this, right? They have co-opted the language of civil rights and are saying that diversity measures are discriminatory against white people, and using the 1964 Civil Rights Act, therefore, to justify withholding federal funds. That's actually how the federal government integrated schools. The federal government used the threat of litigation, but what was most effective was the power of the purse. And they threatened to withhold funds from districts, including Waterloo, if those districts did not integrate. And now we're seeing this extremely perverse thing that the federal government is using that same civil rights mechanism um, to impose a regressive, anti-civil rights, segregationist mandate across school districts and across institutions. And unfortunately, they're being aided and abetted by the state legislature.
Maybe kind of like as a last question, I was talking to my co-host yesterday because I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to have third choices, right? That
Right. I guess I didn't answer that.
but like I mean, I think the actions
Yeah.
the Freedom School did, right?
Yeah.
It was talking. Me and Amy were chatting about, when our institutions aren't up for the task. I fundamentally feel like it's it's a sign of a strong civic order, right? Of a organic and vibrant or growing civic order when a group like the Freedom School can pick up what gets dropped by our institutions, right? That there are institutions to kind of pull us, to continue to pull on us, to continue to do that work when our institutions fail to meet the moment. And what's the idea to pull out of this moment when districts across the state, when institutions across the nation, right, are being, they're given this kind of brutal decision matrix, right? What should we take away from this like episode in the history of Waterloo and the state and this read-in?
I think that's such an important question and obviously very timely because of the moment we're in. So when I founded the Freedom School, it was right after 2020. It was after the Black Lives Matter protests, but it was also when we were starting to see, Iowa had introduced the anti-1619 Project ban, which didn't pass. Many other states did, and then they came back with these divisive concept laws, which did pass. So we've never taken public funds. We get no federal funds, we get no state funds, because I knew that was going to render us vulnerable if we did that. So I think the answer is twofold. We can't seed the public schools. We cannot. Public schools are one of the few democratic institutions that we have left. We have to believe and continue to support a common good. What we're seeing is the dismantling of the idea of a common good, the dismantling and trying to privatize everything. We can't run the country like a company. Companies exist to make profit. Government exists to serve the people. And so I think that this is the moment where civil society has to step up and, one, protect our public institutions, but also fill in the gap in the ways that they can't. What I was able to do was to take this really ugly moment and raise money. I raised money from local people, like individuals donated, local institutions donated, as well as national institutions have donated to make sure that we could push back and resist what was happening in the public schools. So there does have to be a third option, but we can't cede the other. I guess that's what I'm saying. And we as civil society, we have to rise up and we have to protect these public goods. We have to, if Waterloo schools are going to face all these cuts, we're going to have to raise taxes on ourselves, right? We're going to have to raise money for the schools outside of government. This is the only thing that's going to get us through right now. And I guess on the last thing I would like to say, what's important, and I think, last I checked, we had more than 800 people now registered to come to this event. What I think is important is people understand we do have power, that it does feel like so much is happening to us, that the times do feel very dark, but we do have power and we can find ways to resist both individually and as a community. And it's so important in this time in particular that we don't cede our power and we show that we won't just allow these things to happen in our names.
Let's leave it there. The 1619 Freedom School will host a free community African-American read-in on Saturday, March 15th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Waterloo West High School's auditorium. A link to the registration page is in the show notes of this episode. You can support the work of the 1619 Freedom School by going to www.1619freedomschool.org/donate. Nikole Hannah-Jones, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Nikole Hannah-Jones on this podcast. That'll teach you not to doubt the power of a DM. I'll be back next Wednesday with the normally scheduled episode. Over the weekend, I'll be dropping an episode of this feed of Iowa Down Ballot. It's a podcast focused on Iowa politics, and I'm pinch hitting as moderator while the great Dave Price is getting some well-deserved rest. Hope you'll join me. And with that, That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. It really does mean a lot when you support the show this way. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This episode is produced by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith. Thanks for listening.